I first saw this village early in the morning, when the fog had not yet lifted and lay between the houses like a forgotten blanket. The road that led there had not known wheels for many years. Grass had broken through the clay, and rainwater stood in the ruts, reflecting the pale sky. I stopped the car, turned off the engine, and listened. There were no dogs barking, no human voices, no metallic clatter of buckets. Only the wind carefully touching the roofs and the rare cry of a bird, as if it were checking whether anyone was still alive here. People had told me that this village did not die all at once, that it was abandoned slowly, year after year, until the last light went out. I came to understand why. Once, it had been an ordinary place, unremarkable and therefore full of life. Houses stood close together, fences were low so neighbors could talk without leaving their gates. In the mornings, the air smelled of smoke from wood stoves and fresh bread. In the center of the village there was a small open space, more a widening of the road than a real square, where tables were set up on holidays and accordions played late into the night. Children were born here, old people sat on benches remembering the past, and the dead were buried in the small cemetery behind the trees. The village lived by simple rules: work, land, memory. The first signs of trouble were almost invisible. The school was closed. Officials said there were too few children, that it would be cheaper to take them to the neighboring settlement. At first, everyone believed it was temporary. Parents walked their children to the bus every morning. The bus arrived irregularly and often broke down. In winter it sometimes did not come at all, and then children stayed home while parents stared out the window, unsure whether to be relieved or afraid. When the school disappeared, the village lost its voice. Children's laughter no longer echoed through the streets, and the silence grew heavier. Then the medical station closed. The paramedic left because his salary stopped arriving on time. The elderly were left alone with their illnesses. Before, they knew that help was close. Now they had to travel far, along the same road that grew more overgrown each year. Not everyone could afford it. Not everyone dared. Illness began to take people faster than before, and each new grave felt like another crack in the village's foundation. Work became scarce. The collective farm collapsed, and the fields slowly filled with weeds. Machinery rusted in the open air, like giant insects forgotten after rain. Young people were the first to leave. They were told that the city had a future, jobs, money. They left with promises to return, but returns were rare. Some found new lives and did not want to look back. Others were ashamed to return with nothing. Letters came less and less often, and then stopped altogether. The older generation held on longer. They could not imagine life anywhere else. The land was part of them, every path was a memory. They continued planting gardens, repairing houses, heating stoves, even when it became clear that none of this was needed anymore. They lived in expectation. Maybe something would change. Maybe the authorities would remember them. Maybe the children would come back. But waiting exhausts more deeply than hard labor. There were other reasons too, spoken of in whispers. In the forest that began just beyond the last houses, strange things sometimes happened. At night, people heard sounds they could not explain, as if someone were walking among the trees. The steps were too heavy for an animal, too uneven for a human. Sometimes livestock disappeared. No tracks were found, only strange flattened circles in the grass. The elders recalled old legends, spoke of cursed places, of forests that did not like being disturbed. The young laughed, but the fear remained, hiding somewhere deep. One night, a house on the edge of the village burned down. The fire spread too fast, far too fast for old dry logs. By the time neighbors arrived, it was already too late. Inside, there were only blackened walls. The owner was gone. They searched for him for days but never found him. Some said he had left without saying goodbye. Others said he went into the forest and never returned. After that, people began locking their doors even during the day, something that had never been necessary before. Winters here had always been harsh, but with each year they seemed to grow crueler. Snow buried the roads, and the village was cut off from the world for weeks. Electricity failed, and nights became especially dark. In those moments, people gathered together, sat by candlelight, and talked. They spoke of the past, of how good things once were, of how everything had changed. These conversations were both comfort and farewell. Gradually, houses emptied. First entire families left, then individuals. Abandoned homes stood with shuttered windows like blind eyes. Inside, furniture remained, photographs hung on walls, dishes sat on shelves. People left believing they would return, but return was always postponed. Nature did not wait. Roofs collapsed, windows shattered, grass grew straight through living rooms. The last to leave was an old woman known by everyone. She had lived here all her life, survived war, hunger, and bitter years. She said she was not afraid to remain alone, that the village was her home and she would die here. One winter, she was found unconscious. The few remaining neighbors called for help. She was taken away and never returned. After that, no one was left. Now only traces remain, footprints erased by rain, signs of life that can still be read if one knows where to look. In one house, an old notebook with children's drawings lies on the table. In another, a clock stopped at the moment its owner last walked out the door. There is something in the air beyond abandonment. This place remembers. People did not leave this village for a single reason. It was a slow, almost invisible death made of many small things: a closed school, a departed doctor, lack of work, fear of the unknown, exhaustion from waiting. Each decision to leave was logical, justified. Together, they created emptiness. I walked the streets, trying to imagine how it once was. Did I hear footsteps, or was it just the wind? At one moment, I thought I saw light flicker in a window, but when I approached, it was only the reflection of the sky. The village did not want to reveal its secrets, but it did not try to hold those who left either. When I drove away, the sun was already high and the fog had disappeared. The village looked almost ordinary, if you did not look too closely. One might think the people had simply stepped out for a while and would soon return. But I knew they would not. Villages do not die when houses collapse. They die when hope disappears. And here, hope had vanished long ago. I looked back one last time and understood that the reason people left was not a curse and not the forest's mystery. It was that the world changed faster than this place could change with it. Caught between past and future, the village was pressed like a dry leaf between the pages of an old book. People left because they wanted to live, and the village remained to remember.